They said it at Thanksgiving, at Christmas, at my aunt's birthday, at my own graduation party, the one they almost didn't throw. She's not college material. 4 words, a kitchen full of relatives, and a girl still young enough to believe them. My name is Allison. I'm 30 years old. And 6 weeks ago, I sat in the front row of an opening ceremony for a brand new $14 million school in the town I grew up in. My parents sat 3 seats away. They'd been invited as honored guests. The mayor was there, the superintendent, 300 people in folding chairs on a September morning that smelled like fresh paint and cut grass. The principal stepped up to the podium. She pulled a cord. A black velvet drape dropped from the lobby wall. Behind it, a portrait. Oil on canvas. 4 feet by 3 feet. The donor who made the school possible. The face on the wall was mine. My mother's knees buckled. She grabbed my father's arm so hard her rings left marks. 300 people watched her sink 2 inches in her seat. Not one of them looked surprised. But I need to go back, because you need to understand what not college material sounded like when it was the only thing anyone ever said about you. Before I continue, if stories like mine matter to you, that subscribe button means more than you know. And drop your city and local time in the comments. I read every single one. I grew up in Ridgedale, Illinois. Population, 11,200. 1 high school. 1 grocery store. 2 churches. A town where everybody knew your family and your family's opinion of you traveled faster than you did. My parents were Dale and Connie Whitmore. Dad managed the regional office of an agricultural supply company. Mom kept the books for a dentist 3 days a week and spent the other 4 being the kind of woman who organized church potlucks and served on the school board. Respectable people. The kind who ironed tablecloths and sent Christmas cards with professional portraits. I had a sister, Catherine, 2 years older. Catherine was the sun, and I was the shadow it cast. Not because Catherine was cruel, she wasn't. She was simply the standard. Honor roll every semester. Varsity swim team. Student council secretary, then vice president, then president. She played the violin and competed in regional science fairs and had a bedroom with framed certificates arranged chronologically on the wall above her desk. My parents kept a scrapbook for Catherine. Leather-bound, gold letters on the spine, Catherine's achievements. It sat on the coffee table in the living room like a decorative object, like a Bible. There was no scrapbook for me. I was not Catherine. I struggled in school. Not because I was unintelligent, I know that now. I had an undiagnosed processing disorder that made timed tests feel like drowning. Numbers rearranged themselves on the page. I read slowly. I wrote slowly. I tested slowly. And slow in the Whitmore house meant stupid. My father called it not being wired right. He said it casually, the way you describe a lawnmower that kept stalling. Not with malice, with resignation. The way you talk about something you've already decided isn't worth fixing. My mother was more precise. Some children are academic, she told Aunt Linda at Thanksgiving dinner when I was 11. I was sitting at the same table, passing the cranberry sauce. Catherine has that gift. Allison is. Different. She's more of a hands-on learner. She smiled at me when she said it. The smile that said, I am being kind. I am softening this. You should be grateful I'm softening this. What she meant was, your sister will go somewhere and you will stay. I was 11 years old. I was holding cranberry sauce. And I understood perfectly. The comparisons were constant, precise, surgical. Every report card was a courtroom. Catherine would bring hers home 4, 0, sometimes 3, 9, once a devastating 3. 8. That prompted a 20-minute family meeting about whether the AP history teacher was grading unfairly. My mother would tape Catherine's report card to the refrigerator next to a magnet from Yellowstone. It stayed there until the next one replaced it. My report card went into a drawer. The junk drawer. The one with rubber bands, expired coupons, and a screwdriver nobody could find a use for. My mother would glance at it the way you glance at a utility bill, noted, filed, forgotten. You got a C in English, my father said once, looking at my 7th grade card. He was standing at the kitchen counter eating a ham sandwich. He didn't sit down for the conversation. Catherine never got below a B+. I tried, try harder. He took a bite, chewed, swallowed. Or try something else. Not everybody's built for school. Not everybody's built for school. I was 12. I believed him. The Christmas after that, my parents gave Catherine a laptop. A Dell Inspiron. Silver. New. $849. I watched her unwrap it on the living room floor while the tree lights blinked red and green against the wrapping paper. My mother took pictures. 8 of them. Catherine holding the box. Catherine opening the lid. Catherine typing her first sentence. My father had written a card. For our future leader. We're so proud. Love, Mom and Dad. My gift was a pack of mechanical pencils from the Walgreens on Route 9. The plastic kind. $3.99. No card. The receipt was still in the bag. I used those pencils until the lead ran out. Then I used them until the erasers were flat. Then I kept them in my desk drawer because throwing them away felt like admitting what they meant. Sometimes I'd hold one and imagine writing something important. Something that mattered enough to use real ink. When I was 14, my parents took Catherine to visit Northwestern. 3 days. Hotel in Evanston. Campus tour. Dinner at a restaurant where the menus didn't have prices. My mother bought Catherine a Northwestern sweatshirt from the bookstore, $65, and hung it on the hook behind Catherine's bedroom door like a flag. I asked if we could visit any colleges for me. My mother said, "Let's not get ahead of ourselves." I was 14. I wasn't asking to enroll. I was asking to imagine. 2 months later, my school held a career day. Students signed up for sessions based on their interests. I signed up for journalism, architecture, and business management. My mother found the form on the kitchen counter and crossed out all 3. She wrote in cosmetology and medical billing. She didn't ask me. She didn't tell me. I found the form in my backpack the next morning with her handwriting over mine, her letters larger and darker, as if the size of the script could make the decision final. 8th grade. Parent-teacher conference. My English teacher, Mrs. Lucero, told my parents I had a real gift for creative writing. She held up an essay I'd written about the oak tree in our backyard, 5 pages, handwritten, with a paragraph about the way the leaves turned colors from the outside in, starting at the edges, like fire-eating paper. She said it was one of the best things a student had ever turned in. My mother said, "That's nice." But what about her math grade? Mrs. Lucero tried again. I really think Allison could pursue. We appreciate it, my father cut in. The voice he used when a conversation was over. The salesman's close. But let's focus on the basics. They left the classroom. I was sitting in the hallway on a plastic chair. My mother walked past me without stopping. My father patted my head, the top of my head, like a dog and said, "Mrs. Lucero says you're doing fine." Fine. That was my word. Catherine got exceptional. I got fine. High school. Catherine graduated valedictorian. Full scholarship to Northwestern. My parents threw a graduation party in the backyard with 63 guests, a catered buffet from Rosario's Italian Kitchen, a chocolate fountain rented from a party supply company in Springfield, and a banner that read Northwestern Bound in purple and white letters. Dad wore a tie. Mom wore a new dress from Talbot's. The neighbors came. The church friends came. Aunt Linda drove 4 hours from Indianapolis. There was a toast. My father stood up with a glass of champagne and said, "To Catherine, we always knew you'd go places." I stood near the garage door and held a plate of pasta I wasn't eating. Nobody toasted me. Nobody mentioned that I'd be starting high school in the fall. Nobody asked if I was nervous. Why waste the ink? That was my father. Junior year, I needed a recommendation letter for a scholarship, the Ridgedale Community Foundation Award, $2,000, open to any graduating senior. My guidance counselor, Mr. Devane, told me I had a strong application. My community service hours were the highest in the class, 340 hours at the Ridgedale Food Bank, reorganizing their inventory system, building a spreadsheet to track donations, designing a flyer that increased drop-offs by 40%. Devane said a parent letter would strengthen the application. I asked my father on a Sunday evening. He was reading the paper at the kitchen table. The Ridgedale Register. He still got the physical edition. "A recommendation letter," he repeated. "Not a question. A measurement. For the Community Foundation Scholarship." He turned a page. "Didn't look up. Catherine didn't need a scholarship. She earned her spot." Devane said, "Allison." He folded the paper. Set it down. Looked at me for the first time. "Why waste the ink? You're not going to college. Let's not pretend. Why waste the ink?" 7 words. He delivered them the way you'd decline a credit card offer. No cruelty in his voice. Just certainty. The certainty of a man who had already written the ending of my story and saw no reason to revise it. I went to my room. I sat on my bed, twin mattress, plaid comforter from JCPenney, no headboard. Catherine's room had a queen bed with a canopy frame and matching nightstands from Pottery Barn. I sat on my bed and stared at the wall and did not cry, because crying in the Whitmore house meant you were dramatic, and dramatic meant you were proving them right. I asked my mother the next morning. She was standing at the kitchen counter packing Catherine's lunch. Catherine was home from Northwestern for spring break, and my mother had stocked the fridge with prosciutto, brie, and organic grapes. My lunch was whatever was left, usually peanut butter. "Mom, would you write me a recommendation for the scholarship?" She paused, put down the knife, tilted her head. "Honey, I think your father's right. You're not really, we love you, but college isn't for everyone. And honestly, the last thing I want is to set you up for disappointment. I'm not asking about college. It's a community service award. But what's the point if it leads to something you can't finish?" She picked up the knife again, resumed slicing. "You should be thinking about practical things. Hair school, dental assisting. Something where you don't have to, read all the time. Something where you don't have to read all the time." My mother said this while slicing brie for my sister. I applied for the scholarship without the parent letter. I didn't win. The student who did had 2 parent letters and a recommendation from a state senator. Devane told me my application was the strongest he'd seen in service hours, but that the committee weighed family support heavily. Devane said a parent letter would strengthen the application. Family support. I almost laughed. The relatives heard it all. Aunt Linda, Uncle Steve, Cousin Marcy, the Pattersons from church, the Novaks from 2 doors down. Every gathering was a performance of the Whitmore family narrative. Catherine was the investment. I was the write-off. "Allison's not really a school person," my mother would say at Easter brunch, at 4th of July barbecues, at Christmas Eve dinner. She said it the way you'd mention a food allergy, matter-of-factly, slightly apologetically, as if it were a condition she'd tried to manage but ultimately accepted. "She'll figure it out eventually," my father would add. The verbal shrug. And eventually, I stopped hearing the words themselves and started hearing only the silence that followed them, the silence of people who nodded and agreed and did not say, "Maybe you should ask Allison. what she thinks. Not one person, not one relative, not one neighbor, not one church friend. In 17 years, not a single adult in my life looked at my parents and said, "Are you sure?" Except one, Devane, the guidance counselor. He called me into his office in April of my junior year, closed the door, sat across from me at a desk covered in college brochures and a stress ball shaped like a brain. "Allison," he said, "you have a 3. 1 gigapascal. Your community service hours are triple the district average. Your essay for the Foundation Award was the best one submitted. I've seen students with a 2.5 get into good programs with the right support. My parents won't write a letter." He was quiet for 4 seconds. He picked up the stress ball, put it down. "I'll write one," he said, "and I'm going to call someone I know at Western Illinois. They have a business program with a community leadership track. It's not Northwestern, but it's a door. My parents won't pay. There's a work-study program, housing assistance, emergency grants. It won't be comfortable, Allison, but it's possible." He looked at me the way no one in my family ever had. Not with pity, not with sympathy, with recognition. I left home 3 weeks after graduation. I was 17. I had $200 in a savings account I'd opened at the Ridgedale Credit Union with birthday money from Aunt Linda, the only relative who ever gave me cash instead of gift cards to places I couldn't afford to shop. I packed a duffel bag, not a suitcase. We didn't have a spare suitcase. Catherine had taken the good one to Northwestern. My mother stood in the kitchen doorway when I left. She was holding a dish towel. She didn't hug me. She didn't cry. She said, "Call us when you get settled." She never defined what settled meant. I think she expected that leaving would be the brief, embarrassing prologue to the inevitable return of the daughter who wasn't college material. My father was in the garage. He didn't come out. I heard the radio through the door. SPN. A baseball game. The sound of a man who'd already moved on. I drove to Macomb in a 1998 Chevy Cavalier with 147,000 miles and a crack in the windshield that ran diagonally from the passenger corner like a scar. I had $200, a duffel bag, a letter from Mr. Devane, and 17 years of evidence that I was nothing. I enrolled at Western Illinois. Work study covered my tuition. I worked the campus mailroom from 6 to 8 a.m., attended classes, then cleaned the student union from 5 to 9 p.m. I ate at the dining hall on my meal plan 14 meals a week, no weekends. On Saturdays and Sundays, I ate peanut butter from the jar with a plastic spoon in my dorm room. My roommate, Diane Okafor, once found me asleep at my desk at 2 a.m. with a textbook open to a chapter on macroeconomics. She put a blanket over my shoulders. She didn't ask questions. Some people know what survival looks like because they've done it themselves. My parents called once that first semester. My mother, "Brief. How's school?" I said, "Fine." She said, "Catherine got an internship at Deloitte." I said, "That's great." She said, "We're so proud of her." The call lasted 90 seconds. She did not ask about my grades. She did not ask about my major. She did not ask if I had eaten that day. I had not. I got a 3.4 my first semester. I called home to tell them. My father answered. "That's nice," he said. "Your mother's at Catherine's awards banquet. Can I call you back?" He didn't call back. I waited 3 days, and then I stopped waiting, and that was the last time I called home to share good news. I graduated in 3.5 years, summa cum laude, business administration with a concentration in organizational leadership. I walked across the stage in a rented cap and gown. The audience clapped. My parents were not in it. They were at Catherine's engagement party in a restaurant in Chicago, a place called Bistro Margot, pre-fixed dinner, $120 a head. I know because my mother mentioned it in the one voicemail she left that month. We can't make it to your little ceremony, honey. Catherine's engagement dinner is the same weekend. You understand. I understood. I'd been understanding my entire life. My first job was an entry-level analyst position at a logistics company in Street. Louis, $36,000 a year. I rented a studio apartment for $680 a month on a street where the streetlights buzzed and the parking lot had a chain-link fence. I owned one suit charcoal from a thrift store on Grand Avenue. I had it tailored for $40. It fit perfectly. I wore it to every meeting for 8 months until I could afford a second one. I was good at my job, not because I was the smartest person in the room, because I was the most prepared. I arrived first. I left last. I read every report twice. I asked questions other people were too proud to ask. I made mistakes, and I fixed them before anyone noticed, and then I made fewer mistakes, and then I stopped making them. My boss, a woman named Janet Colvin, called me into her office after my first annual review. She sat behind a glass desk with a vase of white orchids and a framed MBA from Wash U. She looked at my performance metrics and said, "You outperformed every analyst in the region by a significant margin." I said thank you. "Where did you go to school?" she asked. "Western Illinois." She nodded. No flinch. No pause. No recalibration of expectations. "Good program," she said. "You should think about your MBA. I'll write you a letter." A letter. Just like that. A woman I'd known for 11 months offered what my own parents wouldn't. I sat in her office for 3 seconds longer than I should have because I was processing the weight of those words, not the offer itself, but the ease of it. The absolute absence of hesitation. To Janet Colvin, writing a letter for a talented employee was automatic. To Dale and Connie Whitmore, writing a letter for their own daughter was a waste of ink. I got my MBA at night. Washington University in Street. Louis, 3 years. I worked full-time during the day and attended classes from 6 to 10 p.m., Tuesday and Thursday. My checking account the month I started, $847. I ate rice and canned black beans 4 nights a week. I studied in the break room at the office after everyone left because my apartment had one lamp with a 40-watt bulb and my eyes ached by 9 p.m. I made the dean's list every semester. No one in my family knew. No one in my family asked. By 23, I was a project manager. By 25, I was director of operations for the Midwest region. By 27, I was vice president of strategic development at Harman Kessler, a supply chain consulting firm with $200 million in annual revenue. My salary was $285,000. I had a corner office on the 14th floor with a view of the arch and a desk made of walnut that I'd chosen myself. I also had a side investment, real estate. I'd started at 24 with a duplex in South Street. Louis, $89,000, purchased with a VA-backed loan co-signed by Diane Okafor's uncle, a retired Marine who'd met me once at Thanksgiving and said, "You remind me of my daughter. She works harder than anyone I know." He'd co-signed without hesitation. A stranger trusted me more than my own parents ever had. By 30, I owned 14 properties. Net worth, $22 million. I drove a black Audi Q7. I had a closet with suits from Theory and Rice and a pair of Italian leather boots that cost more than my first month's rent. I had a savings account, a brokerage account, a 401 KEK, and a Roth IRA. I had everything my parents told me I'd never have, and I had it because I'd done the one thing they said I couldn't. I'd read. I'd studied. I'd passed every test they told me I wasn't built for. On paper, I was the kind of success story that gets profiled in business magazines. In my chest, I was still the girl at the kitchen table watching her father fold a newspaper and say, "Why waste the ink?" That's the thing about the sentences people carve into you when you're young. You can build a skyscraper over the wound. You can fill the scar with marble and glass and walnut desks and corner offices. But at 2 a.m., when the building is empty and the lights are off, you can still feel the carving. It doesn't bleed anymore, but it's there. The letters, the shape, the handwriting of someone who should have loved you better. What would you do if the people who were supposed to believe in you were the ones who made sure no one else did? Would you prove them wrong? Or would you disappear entirely? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one. I hadn't spoken to my parents in 4 years. They hadn't called. I hadn't called. Catherine sent a Christmas card every December, the kind with the whole family on the front, professionally photographed, matching sweaters. Her husband, Gerald. Their 2 kids, Emma and Jack. The card said, "Merry Christmas from the Blanchards." My name wasn't mentioned. I wasn't expected to be. My parents told relatives I'd gone out west. They said it like I'd joined a commune or a cult, vaguely, with a slight wince. "Allison's doing her own thing," my mother said to Aunt Linda at Easter. She was never really a Ridgedale girl. As if leaving were a character flaw. As if staying in a place that told you every day that you were nothing was a sign of strength. What they didn't tell the relatives, I'd found out through Mr. Devane, who still emailed me every few months, who'd become the closest thing I had to a parent that my mother had called the Ridgedale Community Foundation the year I applied for the scholarship. She'd told the committee chair, Betty Calloway, that Allison has some challenges, and that the family felt the scholarship would be better suited for a student with more academic focus. She hadn't just declined to write me a letter. She'd actively undermined my application. Devane learned this 3 years later, when Betty Calloway retired and mentioned it casually at a farewell lunch. "Your mother called me," Betty said. "She said it wouldn't be a good fit for Allison." "Mr." Devane forwarded the email to me without comment. Just the facts. He knew I didn't need commentary. I needed evidence. That email sat in a folder on my laptop labeled Ridgedale. I added to it over the years. Every fact I collected about the distance between what my parents said about me and what they did to me, not for revenge, for clarity. Because you can forgive a person who dismisses you, but you can't forgive a person who actively blocks the door and then tells everyone you chose not to walk through it. The idea came to me on a Tuesday in March. I was reviewing a portfolio analysis in my office when I got a Google alert. Ridgedale Unified School District had been approved for a new elementary school. But the state budget shortfall meant construction was unfunded. The district was looking for private donors. I read the article twice. Then I closed my laptop and looked out the window at the arch. The Mississippi was gray that day, the color of old steel. A school in Ridgedale, the town that told me I wasn't built for school. I called my financial advisor that afternoon. I said I wanted to make a $14 million donation. He was silent for 6 seconds. Then he said, "To whom?" "Ridgedale Unified. The school district in Illinois? The one with, yes." He paused again. "May I ask why?" "Because every child in that district deserves someone who believes they're college material." The donation took 4 months to structure. I worked with attorneys, accountants, a foundation specialist named Rachel Tran who'd handled 9-figure education grants and still called me every Thursday to check in like I was the only client who mattered. The terms were specific. The school would be built on the vacant lot at the corner of Elm and Fourth, the lot where the old Ridgedale Community Center used to stand, the building where I'd done 340 hours of community service, sorting canned goods, and designing flyers. The school would include a community resource center, a technology lab, and a college preparation office open to any student in the district. One condition: the donation was anonymous. I didn't want my name attached. Not yet. I wanted the school to be about the students, not about me. But the school board insisted on recognizing the donor at the opening ceremony. They commissioned a portrait, oil on canvas. An artist in Chicago named Gabriel Murillo painted it from a photograph Rachel provided. I sat for a second session in his studio on a Saturday afternoon. The studio smelled like turpentine and linseed oil, a sharp, clean smell that reminded me of new beginnings and old wood. The portrait showed me from the shoulders up, dark hair, direct gaze, no smile. Gabriel said, "You look like someone who's been through something and decided not to hide it." I said, "Paint it exactly like that." The ceremony was September 14th, a Saturday. The school was finished red brick, tall windows, a playground with equipment that looked like it belonged in a catalog. 300 chairs arranged on the front lawn. White canopy in case of rain. Podium with the Ridgedale Unified Seal. A black velvet drape covering a frame on the lobby wall, visible through the glass doors. My parents were invited as community pillars. Dale and Connie Whitmore. My father had been on the school board for 8 years. My mother had organized fundraisers for the PTA since Catherine was in first grade. They received embossed invitations, cream-colored cardstock with gold lettering. They RSVP'd within a week. They didn't know I was the donor. Nobody in Ridgedale did. Rachel Tran had handled every communication through the foundation. The superintendent, Dr. Amara Osei, knew my name but had signed an NDA. The portrait was covered. I arrived 40 minutes early. I parked on a side street 3 blocks away. I wore a navy blazer, white blouse, and gray trousers. Simple, deliberate. The kind of outfit my mother would have called professional if she'd ever imagined I could be. I sat in my car for 11 minutes. I gripped the steering wheel. My knuckles were white. I was not nervous. I was something else, something that doesn't have a name. The feeling of standing at the edge of a distance you've traveled for 13 years and seeing both ends at once. I walked to the school. The lawn was freshly mowed. The chairs were filling. I recognized faces. Mrs. Calloway, Betty Calloway, the former foundation chair, now 81, in a wheelchair pushed by her grandson. Torres, who ran the hardware store on Main Street and had given me my first job sweeping his stockroom for $5 an hour. Donna Patterson from church, in a floral blouse, fanning herself with the program. People I hadn't seen in 13 years. People who'd watched my parents call me not college material and said nothing. My parents were in the second row. My father in a blue blazer with brass buttons. My mother in a cream dress with a pearl brooch. They looked like what they were. Prominent citizens at a civic event, comfortable in their chairs, comfortable in their roles, comfortable in the story they'd been telling about themselves for 30 years. Catherine was not there. She'd sent a polite decline. Emma had a swim meet. The principal, Dr. Monica Alvarez, opened the ceremony at 10 a.m. She thanked the school board. She thanked the construction team. She thanked the teachers. She introduced Dr. Osei, who spoke for 8 minutes about the future of education in Ridgedale. Then Dr. Osei said, "And now, it is my honor to introduce the extraordinary individual whose generosity made this school possible." The crowd leaned forward. 300 bodies shifting in 300 folding chairs. The collective sound of fabric and metal and curiosity. For the past year, this donor has chosen to remain anonymous, Dr. Osei continued. They asked that the focus remain on the students and the community. But today, with their permission, we unveil their portrait a permanent fixture in the school's main lobby, so that every child who walks through these doors will know the face of the person who believed in them. She turned to the lobby entrance. The glass doors were propped open. The black velvet drape hung floor to ceiling. The donor of the Allison Whitmore Learning Center. She said my name before the drape fell. I heard it travel through the crowd like a current Whitmore, and I watched 300 faces rearrange themselves in real time. Osei pulled the cord. The drape fell. The portrait, 4 feet by 3 feet. Oil on canvas. My face. My direct gaze. The look that Gabriel Murillo had called someone who's been through something and decided not to hide it. The silence lasted 3 seconds. 3 seconds that held 13 years. Then the sound. Not applause, not yet. A collective intake of breath. 300 people breathing in at the same time. The sound of recognition. The sound of a room understanding something it hadn't been told. I stood up from my seat in the front row. I hadn't been introduced to my parents. I hadn't been seated near them. I'd been placed at the end of the first row, next to Rachel Tran, who squeezed my hand once and let go. I smoothed the front of my blazer. I pressed my feet into the grass. I felt the September air on my face, warm, dry, the kind of air that smells like cut fields and the end of something. I turned to face the crowd. My mother saw me first. Her face went through 4 expressions in 2 seconds: confusion, recognition, disbelief, and something I'd never seen before. Something that looked like vertigo. Like the floor had shifted under her chair and she was reaching for something solid and finding only air. Her right hand shot to my father's forearm. Her pearl brooch caught the morning light. My father's mouth opened, closed. His jaw tightened. His eyes moved from my face to the portrait, back to my face, back to the portrait. He blinked rapidly, 6 or 7 times, the way you blink when you're trying to clear something from your vision and realizing it's not going away. Betty Calloway, in her wheelchair near the 3rd row, pressed both hands to her cheeks. Her grandson leaned down and whispered something. She shook her head. She didn't take her eyes off the portrait. Torres, the hardware store owner, sat perfectly still for 5 full seconds. Then he nodded. Once, slowly. The nod of a man who was not surprised. The nod of someone who'd sold a 17-year-old a broom and watched her sweep a stockroom like she was building something only she could see. Donna Patterson's hand went to her mouth. She held it there for 10 seconds. Her eyes were wet. She turned to the woman beside her, Carol Novak, who'd lived 2 doors down from us on Maple Street, and said something I couldn't hear. Carol Novak covered her own mouth. The gesture traveled through the crowd like a wave. A man named Ray Pruitt, he'd coached Catherine's swim team, and had never once spoken to me, leaned back in his chair and folded his arms. He stared at the portrait. Then he looked at my parents. Then back at the portrait. His expression was the expression of a man recalculating a total he'd never thought to check. Alvarez stepped to the microphone. Allison Whitmore graduated from Ridgedale High School 13 years ago, she said. She went on to earn a bachelor's degree summa cum laude from Western Illinois University and an MBA from Washington University in Street. Louis, she is currently Vice President of Strategic Development at Harmon Kessler. Her $14 million donation is the largest private gift in the history of Ridgedale Unified School District. She paused, looked at me, then added, quietly, into the microphone. Every child who walks through these doors will know that their potential is not determined by who believes in them, but by who they choose to become. The applause started. It began at the back of the crowd, a slow, building rumble, like thunder rolling in from the edge of a field. It moved forward, row by row, until the entire lawn was clapping. People stood. Not all at once. In sections. Torres stood first. Then Betty Calloway's grandson helped her raise her hand to clap. Then Donna Patterson. Then 3 teachers in the 4th row who'd never taught me but were standing anyway. Then the rest. My parents did not stand. They sat in their chairs like 2 people who'd been bolted to the metal frames. My mother's face was the color of the cream dress she was wearing. Her lips moved. No sound came,